Hey there everyone, and welcome to the video. Today we are going to be having a look at Venus in Taurus. So this is going to be a part of a series I'll be working on called Series of the Spheres, where we will sort of profile planets in transit and how they shift and change as they move through the zodiac in accordance with their varying cycles. So today it's going to be all about Venus in Taurus, which is an exciting transit because we have the benefic planet Venus in one of her home signs. So we'll break down a little bit who is Venus and who is she when she's in Taurus. We'll also have a little bit of a look at some of the upcoming transits, because as Venus moves through Taurus, she's going to be setting off the Saturn-Uranus square, which is a feature of the astrology of 2021 and of 2022 as well. So firstly, Venus will enter Taurus on April 14 in the northern parts of the planet, and here on April 15. So Venus will stay in Taurus till about May 8 or 9. So it's a fairly quick tour of Taurus for Venus. That being said, though, this is going to be a lovely time to really perhaps slow down, smell the roses, and prioritize pleasure. And that's how I see Venus in Taurus is a real priority of pleasure. So when we are looking at planets, planets are of their own self. They are who they are. So looking at Venus today, it is, Venus is going to Venus, regardless of what sign she is occupying. She is going to try and do Venus things of the best of her ability in various signs. Naturally, when she's in Taurus, she's going to do that super easily. So if you are studying astrology online, if you're trying to make sense of all the signs and symbols and what it does mean for your life, looking at the transits of planets, particularly these faster moving planets like the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and to some extent Mars, it will, Venus for the next few weeks is going to occupy the part of your chart that's ruled by Taurus. So you may not have Venus in Taurus, but you will have a Venus and you will have a house ruled by Taurus. So when Venus comes home to Taurus, she is going to activate that particular chart in your life. So while Venus in Taurus has her own significations and symbolism, for some, it might be the first house of body and self. For others, it might be the 10th house of career and major life plans. For others, it might be, health and routines and daily habits in the 6th and illnesses too. And for others, it might be the 2nd. So as you're listening, think about how some of these, the symbols or the symbolism that we'll be discussing applies to those particular areas of life. So Venus, she is, I've said this in another video, she is the Goldilocks planet. I think it was the Venus-Pluto video I did a little while back. Venus is not too cold and she's not too hot in terms of her quality, her temperature. So she is sort of tepid, I guess. She's medium. And she's also a moist planet. So she's tepid or cool or moderate in heat and coolness. So she's kind of, I guess, neutral in that sense, in that she's not, some people like summer, some people like winter, but she's symbolizes one of those days where you walk outside, it's not hot, it's not cool, it's just right. And she's also moist. And so planets and signs that have the quality of moisture bind and connect things. We know that in cooking, that moisture binds. When our skin gets dry, our lips get chapped, we need to apply some kind of moisture to help bring things together. So Venus does bring things together. She's a bonding planet. She's one of our prime attractors in astrology. And so Venus, she is going to, by sign, she's going to tell us what we are attracted to, what brings us pleasure, what brings us joy and happiness. And so the sign is going to tell you how. So if you have a fire sign, for instance, you might be more attracted to experiences and activity. But Venus is in Earth for the next 3 weeks. She's in solid, stable, fixed, enduring Taurus. So she is going to be primarily focused on the five senses, the physical embodiment of pleasure. So Venus in Taurus loves the five. She's all about the five senses. So touch, smell, taste, sound or hearing, and there's another one, but there's five. I'm sure what you'll do. Sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing, I guess. So, she's really going to be focusing on those more earthly, embodied, tangible pleasures. So Venus in Taurus isn't so much about, let's go and climb the Himalayas. She's going to be more, let's have some beautiful food, some wine, music, things that really evoke the senses. So this can be a very grounding, sensual influence for the next 3 weeks. So Venus is, our primary significator of relationships. So she does speak to the things that we like about related dating, mating, and relating. Of course, the sign that rules the 7th house is going to tell you more about your unique relationship setup. But Venus might also show us the things that we're attracted to. So what makes us turn our head when we see another person? What makes us turn our head when we see something in a shop window, for example? So, Venus sometimes is described our planet of values. And why I don't fully agree with that, because we can get value from all the planets. But value will, I'd like to sort of reshape that. And it's more about what we do for pleasure. So Venus is when the bills are paid and the jobs are done. What do you like to do? And that's for leisure or entertainment, or just because you can. And so Venus naturally rules the 5th house. It's the place where she finds her joy. And so the 5th house is also where, what do you do for fun when the bills are paid and the jobs are done, so to speak. And so Taurus, so sorry, I just wanted to also mention that Venus is sometimes linked with money. And that's not true, that she doesn't rule money. Mercury does. So Mercury is the exchange of money. Jupiter is the significator of wealth. But the way I do see Venus linked to money is perhaps how you like to spend it. So I have Venus in Taurus, so I love spending money on food. If my cupboards are full, I am happy. And one thing that I do actually value is the ability to, buy my groceries, swipe the card, and not have to think about how much it costs and not care about how much it costs. So that's one of my Venus and Taurus things. I love food. I really do. So, and so that is, Venus and Taurus. She loves the things that satisfy her basal needs, her primary needs. So for some people, that will be other senses. So maybe sexual pleasures and senses, or, for some people, you might have to have your favorite perfume and that makes you feel good. Or maybe it's your favorite music playing in the background. Maybe it's fresh flowers or a certain type of fabric that you really enjoy wearing, or a certain brand or label. So Venus in Taurus is definitely a quality over quantity type of energy. So Taurus, I think, is, I guess maybe it's a little bit of my bias, but I think it's a little bit of a misunderstood sign. It's cold and it's dry, but Venus, who is sort of temperate and moist, is home there. So it is a little bit of a juxtaposition of oppositions in a sense, in that respect. It's like, how does this hot, moist planet be at home in a cold, dry sign? So one thing that sometimes I think gets overlooked with Taurus is that it is a yin, nocturnal, sort of feminine or receptive sign, but it's in the part of the solar year where the sun is rising. So it's a spring sign. So the sun is rising to get to the June solstice, the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, where astrology takes its symbolism from. So it is still a planet, or an energy, I should say, Taurus, that is ascending. There's a hunger there. And I think sometimes that's what sometimes gets a little bit forgotten about with Taurus. It's very driven by, not in a Mars way and not in a Saturn way, but it's very, it needs satisfying, I guess. And so Taurus planets, Venus and Taurus, are really kind of ruled by their desires, or ruled by the desire to be satisfied. And, you know, those elements can be a little bit sort of personal within the range of those sort of Taurus desires, you know, whether it's frolicking in a field of tulips and being around all the pretty flowers, or to the opposite extreme where it can almost be like this hunger or this devouring power that can be like bloodlusty too. We'll have a look at a couple of celebrities very briefly, just to help give you a couple of archetypes of how Venus and Taurus can work. So we've got this cool or temperate planet with a cold, dry sign. So Venus in Taurus, this is a fixed expression of Venus. So there's a definite feeling here of, I know what I want. So that's one thing I think all Taurus planets are very good at, knowing very deeply within themselves what they want. And this may also come across as what I don't want. I know what I don't want. I may not know what I want, but I know what I don't. And so this can often show up in Taurus placements. And when I was a kid, I grew up in a very cricketing family. So cricket, if you're catching from another part of the globe, a bit sort of maybe a little bit like baseball, but different. Anyway, I grew up, you know, cricket was a part of my life. And back in the days when cigarette companies were allowed to sponsor sporting events, you know, Benson and Hedges was the big sponsor of cricket. And that was the brand of cigarettes that my mum used to smoke back when she did. And she was a Taurus, and of course she didn't really know anything about astrology except for that. But she used to kind of say, you know, I'm like Benson and Hedges, when only the best will do. And that phrase, that slogan was, you know, the brand tagline for Benson and Hedges, when only the best will do. So in the next 3 weeks, when Taurus activates a particular house topic in your chart, it's inviting you to double in pleasure. Find out what you do want, and maybe so you know what you don't. And that can be sort of that little bit of sort of a defining moment for this particular transit, because it's hitting up against Saturn and Uranus. And so maybe there is going to be a challenge here where Venus has to change. Venus and Taurus has to change, or she's been invited or pushed or goaded to change. To, do you really want that thing, or actually do you not? And so this might be something that happens through, hey, I need to get out of a comfort zone, I'm going to try this thing, and then you reinforce the fact that you didn't like that thing. Or maybe you realize it's the Saturn situation and say, well, this is endured for as long as it needs to, and I'm going to try something fresh, unique, or new. So wherever you're feeling a little bit stuck or stagnant, or you need to sprinkle a little bit of Venus sugar in your life, or on your life, you know, the next few weeks are going to help you figure out what that might be for you. So Venus will conjoin Uranus early in her phase, and that'll be the 22nd, 23rd. And then quickly she'll move to square Saturn on the 24th, 25th. So this is at 10 and 12 degrees of those fixed signs. So if you have planets in, you know, that range with fixed signs, so that is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, it's going to be a very big few weeks for you. So I'm recording this on the 14th of April. So this is really going to be sort of next week and moving into next weekend that this is going to really play out. So it's an Anzac Day here in Australia next weekend. So be a long weekend. That's our Memorial Day, if you like. So yeah, do take note of, you know, what you might want to do differently or change up, or where maybe you are going to dig in those Taurian heels and stay the same. So, okay, just want to make sure that I cover off all the notes that I wanted to share with you today. So if you are studying astrology at home and trying to figure out how all these signs and symbols work together, one way to kind of embody, we're talking about Venus today, is to think about how Venus moves through these signs and how her expression shifts and changes. Is imagine a website where you've got the menu tab and you click on Venus, and then it brings a series of drop-down menu options. And so you have Venus in Aries, Venus in Taurus, Venus in Gemini, all the way through the 12 signs. And so Venus has had to be inspired by or look up to Mars when she's been in Aries for her guidance. She can only do her Venus self, because regardless of the sign she's in, Venus is going to Venus, but she's trying to do it in Mars's territory. But now she's coming home to her own sign, so she can be like a double dose or a pure dose of Venusian pleasure. So this is the sign of Taurus. As I said, it's fixed, it's solid, it's earthly, it's cold, it's dry, it's feminine. So this is about, if you think about the symbol that, or the animal symbol of Taurus, it's the cow or the bull or the calf. And so one thing that Taurus is very renowned for is its symbolism or its affinity with the natural environment. And if you think about the cow, it is an animal of great provision. It can chew the grass for you, and you don't have to mow your paddock. It produces milk, it produces meat, it produces leather. So it is a very fecund symbol of wealth. If you're a farmer in medieval times, if you had some cattle, you were considered wealthy. It's also it's a great provider at many levels. So it will provide food, it will provide clothing, it will provide its skin, leather, and also milk. So it's a very fecund symbol of providing. And that's what Taurus planets love to do. They love to give, they love to provide. They also love to hoard. And I think that's that power of Taurus being that spring sign and rising towards the sun there. At the solstice, it wants to also hold on to what it obtains or what it accumulates. And the concept of to have and to hold is very, very strong for Taurus, because once they have something, they don't often want to let go of it. And as a bit of a sidebar, sometimes you see with planets with Taurus, they will lose everything in order to kind of gain it back. And the cow too is very much, it's a very symbolic creature. It's very revered in India, for example. It's a sacred animal. In some divisions of Islamic faith, the calf is very important. In various pagan traditions, sacrifices were often, it was a calf or a cow. And in Spain, for instance, they have the matadors and the bullfighting and the running of the bulls and things like that. So there's that that's where that power of that Taurus can kind of come through. It's the bloodlust, as I sort of alluded to earlier. It's this desire to overpower something that's so strong and so fecund and so abundant. It's like almost like that sort of human influence there. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of, a few ideas to play with Taurus. So when Venus comes home there's like an upsurge of these desires. So this might be, your appetites for whatever the desire means for you. It might be more wine, more food, more pleasure, more just doing nothing. So there is that sort of certain simple pleasures with Taurus. They don't always ask for a lot, but they sort of demand the best. There's a certain I am, and so I'm going to get kind of Venus, sort of attraction, Venus and Taurus thing there. They don't have to chase for what they want. They know it's going to come to them. So there is, a bit of a manifestation quality available to us in the next 3 weeks if you really want to kind of zhuzh up or magnify some of the Taurus particulars in your own birth chart. So I did mention that we were going to talk a little bit about a couple of celebrities that have Venus and Taurus. So you can kind of, think about some of the archetypes in play there. And so one of the ones that I often think about is Paul McCartney. So along with cricket, I grew up with the Beatles, and Paul McCartney being my dad's favorite. So he was known to be very tight with his money, ran a very, very tight ship, which, Taurus is very possessive. And so, but at the same time, he made everything look easy. Apparently the amount of songs he has written and, recorded over the course of his career is a mind-boggling amount. So he just used to be able to very fecund and productive to churn out that amount of music. But when it came to that music, it was very interesting because I think the Beatles were the last sort of musical act that, not Spotify, iTunes were trying to get on board with, but he was very adamant about not having the Beatles available on a digital download type of platform. So really kind of holding on to his Venusian creations. Prince also had a similar thing to this. So, very sensual man, very sexual in his energy. But yeah, he had a big part of his sort of latter life career was the ability to actually have ownership, that possessive quality of his music. We've also got Johnny Depp as another person. He has become that sort of enduring beauty, if you like. He was, I think, the 21 Jump Street came first, or maybe it was the Nightmare of Elm Street movies. I can't remember now, and now he's, kind of an older man and still classified as I'm sure he still takes the sexiest man alive title on People magazine or what have you, but he does have that sort of enduring, sensual, long-lasting type of beauty. And I think he advertises fragrance for House of Dior now. Juliette Binoche. So you might remember that movie Chocolat from a really long time ago now. And it was basically a movie just walking the streets of Paris eating chocolate, from what I recall. But she is a Venus and Taurus and played a very Venusian Taurus character. Debbie Harry. So she's like, call me. It wasn't, I'll call you. So she definitely was a very, very sensual and very provocative lady of the time. And of course, there are some, more notorious expressions of Venus and Taurus. Hitler was one, Gaddafi another, and there is a serial killer in the US whose name escapes me now, but there's that sort of desire to sort of control and behold and possess, and that can sometimes become very overpowering. Ella Fitzgerald, she's talked about an at last my love has come along, and talks about how wonderful, how long she waited and how wonderful it's going to be that it lasts. So that's a very interesting expression of that. And she also had that amazing, evocative, moody, soulful voice, as does Adele, another Venus in Taurus person. So I've got a list here. I could go on and on about that, but a quick Google search will also help you explore some of those Venus in Taurus archetypes. So as I mentioned, Venus is going to hit up against Uranus very quickly in this part of her transit. This is going to happen sort of next week, 23rd, 24th. And so tours of Venus in Taurus are not this same, they're not the same anymore, because we've got this outer energy influence. And so she's going to be co-present with Uranus for the full tour, but that conjunction is building and takes place early in the cycle because Uranus is only at 10 Taurus at the moment. So this is going to really perhaps shake up some of these pleasures that you've learned to rely on over time, or the part of your life that Taurus rules. So if it's your 7th house, for example, this might be, hey, let's do something different. Let's shake up some of these routines. if it is your 4th house, this might be the time to try something new with your decor or your relationships, your domestic relationships. So there is a certain upsetting the apple cart when Venus and Uranus get together in Taurus. And it reminds me a little bit of the farmer coming to the cow with a cattle prod and branding him or her, the cow, is very upsetting to the cow. Okay. But it's also part of that possessiveness. I have to brand this animal. So the farmer, 10 kilometers from me, doesn't claim it if my cow breaks through the fence. So, and it's very upsetting to the animal when it's just, happily grazing in the pastures. So, this is almost like that electric shockwave that can come through relationships, or what you want to experience out of pleasure. Sometimes, shaking things up, a little bit of salt when you maybe prefer sugar, can sometimes be just that little bit of a change you need. Change can be as good as a holiday, but do keep in mind that Taurus is the most change resistant out of all the signs. So Uranus is very uncomfortable. Venus and Uranus isn't so bad as a planetary combination in of itself, but Taurus is really, Taurus actively resists change. And so when change is forced upon it, it will really resist. Push me and I will resist, as Eddie Vedder once said. So, and then of course Venus will then, very quickly activate that square to Saturn, and that might be where the real challenge comes in. It's like, okay, the shock of Uranus and then Saturn. It's like, okay, well, what do I change, or what do I stay the same? Want to stay the same? What endures? What's not going to endure? And what's the new sort of status quo going to be? So it's going to be a very interesting few weeks for Venus ruled things. So this will be the pleasure, harmony, what brings us joy, women's issues, women's rights, and anything else to do with Venus as well. So what is beauty? What is harmony? What is connectivity in the world when we are continually sort of detached from each other, whether it's a mask or social distancing? What does it mean to sort of truly connect with others in a really embodied, in the flesh way, which is what Venus and Taurus really wants to do. So particularly this year, and the energy that surrounds that is an uncomfortable place. I did some grocery shopping this morning, and even though we're all wearing masks, people are still on top of each other. Whereas this time last year, there was a little bit more respect around the distancing, whereas now it's a little different. So we are still playing around with these new normals in how we relate on a collective level. But of course, look to the Taurus house of your own chart, and that's going to help guide you in what may change or may need to stay the same in your own personal life. So I hope that this has helped you understand Venus and Taurus and what's coming up for her in the next few weeks as well. So until next time, I'll say bye for now.